I was wondering about our yesterdays and digging through the rubble. And to say the least, somebody went to a hell of a lot of trouble to make sure that when we looked things up, we wouldn't fare too well, and we would come up with totally unreliable pictures of ourselves.
Psst. Psst. What do Spotify, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, RadioPublic.com, and Pocket Cast all have in common? Me, the Conversation Piece podcast with Aquila. So go ahead and hit that notification button. Go ahead. I'll wait. All right, back to the show. Hello, and welcome back to The Conversation Piece with your host, Aquila. The sea is frozen, but the sky is clear. The humidity is low, and rainfall is scarce if ever present. The average temperature is below freezing in the double digits, but there are some for whom this is just the right climate to explore. The lure of the Arctic is tugging at my heart. To me, the trail is calling, the old trail, the trail that is always new. Matthew, the first person to stand on top of the world, was a black man named Henson. Matthew Henson's story is of legend. He was born on August 8, 1866, 1 year after the Emancipation and the end of the Civil War, so his dreams and ambitions were not hampered by the status of enslavement. Yet, however, he was still a black man in America, and as his story unfolded, he would at times feel the pinch of that reality. But he would live long enough to see his achievements rewarded and justice fully served. At the age of 12, he was a cabin boy on the sailing ship Katie Hines, under the mentorship of Captain Childs. For 6 years, this honed his sense of adventure as he traveled the world. With the passing of Captain Childs in 1887, he left the sailing behind and worked as a furrier clerk in Washington, D.C., but his restless, adventurous spirit was lifted when fate introduced him to the man he didn't realize would be his expedition partner for years to come. At that time, he was Naval Officer Robert Peary. The pair were compatible immediately, and Peary employed Henson as a personal assistant. But as their story unfolds, this compatibility would not last. Robert Peary was in the Navy Corps of Civil Engineering and had to map and explore several key strategic geographic locations in the interest of the United States. While on leave from the Navy, Peary had the opportunity to explore Greenland and brought Henson along with him. In 1891, the two began an 18-year partnership of exploring and mapping out the entirety of Greenland's ice cap. The two recovered 3 meteor fragments that were sold to the American Museum of Natural History in New York that allotted them enough money to fund further expeditions. The fragments were the largest and heaviest to be transported by humans at that time. This gained them recognition as a great achievement, but the reality of status was still ever present, as Peary was recognized as the primary face of their team. Henson's skills, however, as a craftsman, linguist, hunter, fisherman, dog handler, and trainer would serve him well. He built and maintained all of the sledges. He was able to communicate with the native Inuit tribe and was known regularly as Matthew the Kind One. He trained most of Peary's recruits during their expeditions. In 1906, Henson and Peary got within 174 miles of the North Pole. That was their 8th attempt. With the backing of President Theodore Roosevelt, the pair set sail from New York on July 6, 1908. Donald B. McMillan, one of the 8 men on the expedition, said of Henson this, quote, "With years of experience equal to that of Peary himself, Henson was indispensable." End quote. Peary himself heaped praise upon Henson with these words, "I can't make it there without him." Remember those words. Arctic conditions are not for the faint of heart, as temperatures fall drastically. It was a race against time, and elements as hazards of leads occur. This is the cracking and drifting of ice that forms holes of open, freezing water. The team decided to strategically drop off supplies and return to the ship as teams would push their way towards their destination, the North Pole. When the time came for Peary and Henson to make their push, they had 3 indigenous Inuits accompany them. They made sure that their push was aggressive as to not fall through any ice cracks. At one point in their push, Henson was the front sledgeman and was 50 yards ahead of Peary, but conditions made them make camp for that night. The following day, Peary took measurements of the location using the sun while it was at high noon. They did it. They reached the North Pole, but who would receive credit? Who got there first? Henson was quoted as stating the following, quote, "I was in the lead that overshot the mark by a couple of miles. We went back then, and I could see that my footprints were the first at that spot." End quote. He also stated, "From the time we knew we were at the pole, Commander Peary scarcely spoke to me. It nearly broke my heart that he would rise in the morning and slip away on a homeward trail without rapping on the ice for me, as was the established custom." A lifetime of partnership cracked over distance, yards, times, hours. Whatever the measurement, that was a tremendous feat by Henson and Peary, and it would seem logical that both would receive credit. But
this is America.
The climate in the country did not give a black man credit for this feat. Peary was rewarded as the first man to set foot on the North Pole, Henson a mere companion. But with a twisted sense of irony, that claim was challenged by Frederick Cook, a man who claimed he was the first a full year ahead of Peary and Henson. The Inuits who accompanied Henson could not help his cause as they did not speak English, and again, Henson was a black man, living in a country where even his own testimony did not carry the same weight as a white man. Henson's life up to that point was full of wonder, adventure, and excitement, but it turned to seclusion until 1937, where he not only was recognized, but vindicated. The Explorers Club of New York made him an honorary member. In 1946, he received a medal equivalent to the one given to Peary by the U.S. Navy. In 1954, he met President Eisenhower. He transitioned on from this world 1 year later, but the honors and accolades continued. In 1996, the UNN commissioned a ship in his honor. In 2000, the National Geographic Society granted him their most prestigious award, the Hubbard Award. Who else received this medal before him? Robert Peary in 1906. These two were fated to be together, even though their friendship didn't last the journey. In 1988, Matthew and his wife's remains were relocated to the Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. He ironically was buried near the Robert Peary Monument. I suppose we can't mention one without the other. They were a team. Matthew met Robert at the age of 12. I suppose the lesson here are the words that Robert himself declared in 1908. "I can't make it there without him." Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Conversation Piece Podcast. I am your humble host, Akila, requesting that you join me again. So, until then, be safe, love, and value yourself so that you can love and value others. I bid you adieu with the greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you.